All right, good afternoon, everybody. Eric here. We're going to do a little Q&A and indicator discussion. How's everybody doing? Hopefully you can hear me. Still clearing the morning frog out of my throat, so I apologize. Okay, well, let's talk a few things. I've been watching the questions this morning in the chat and kind of jotting some notes down, and I'm going to try to discuss a few of those things, at least with a little bit of the theory behind the indicators and things of that nature, and maybe alleviate a little bit of confusion. And then once I've done that, then we'll go into some Q&A, okay? So let's talk about, well, John brought up the discussion of the dots, right? So remember, the dots are drawn when one of the oscillators changes direction, right? And there is a setting built into all the indicators that this turn threshold, and that setting is designed to allow you, if you want to filter out some of those dots. And the reason we added that in is because there are occasions when the market is just kind of going nowhere, rapidly oscillating around the zero line, and you just start getting a whole bunch of dots. So that turn threshold is in there to allow you to filter out turns that occur with, some relative distance to the zero line here. So it's defaulted at 5, but you could put it, anywhere you want. And it is chart dependent on the squeeze rotation and on the trend rotation indicators. So you will have to go in, and once you have your chart set up, you can set up how you want it. But the question that was popping up is, okay, I switch my chart over to the spiders, and suddenly all my dots go away, right? And that's because the turn threshold still defaulted to 5, but the spiders are not moving in then $5 increments. So we're not getting any dots. So here's what you do. If that, if you're not seeing the dots, you can obviously change the turn threshold. But my recommendation is, if that's not making sense to you, or you don't find the need to turn some of them off, just put the turn threshold to 0. Just put it to 0 and leave it there. And what that does is it just then shows you all the dots, and that'll work on any chart. So that's one quick fix. Once you get used to these charts and used to the indicators, and you've set them up exactly how you like them, whether you're trading the spiders or ES or SPX or NDX or whatever, then you might want to come up with an appropriate value for that makes more sense, so that when we're just oscillating around the zero line, you can cut out some of these dots. Now, you can always just ignore them. But that's the reason that setting's there, and that's why some people were not seeing dots when they switched their chart over to the spiders. So I just wanted to clear that up. So let's talk about that a little bit more. So the arrow and dot colors, excuse me. So I've seen a lot of questions over, what's the red arrow, what's the black arrow? So all the arrows are colored in various shades of red and green. And the reason why that was done is to help you differentiate what time frame that particular signal is coming from. And so I could have gone on and made them, 8 different colors of the rainbow, but then we would have had to memorize all that, right? So what we did was we made them, shades essentially. So the darker the shade of red or green corresponds to the smaller time frame. So if you look at this chart of the spiders, these dark red arrows and dark red dots are from the very smallest time frame. This is a 1-minute chart, so those are 1 and 2 minute dots. And then the brighter arrows and dots are, moving your way up through the time frame, so that you can, without thinking about it, you can look at the chart and go, aha, that's an arrow from a 10-minute chart, or that's an arrow from, a 1-minute chart, because there is a difference. And some of you have been talking about this. Hey, I see an arrow on a chart and then it's gone. Well, if you recall back to the Saturday class, when we were developing these tools, one of the things we were trying to do was condense down into one screen what's going on 6 different charts, because it's hard to look at 6 different charts at once. It's just overwhelming. So you've got the 6 different oscillators here, and you've got the signals tied to each oscillator, but you're still in essence looking at 6 different charts real time. So imagine if I'm not looking at this 1-minute chart, let's say I'm looking at the 10-minute chart, right? And I see an arrow on a 10-minute chart show up. Remember, that 10-minute bar has 10 minutes to form before it closes, right? So if the price is just starting to turn up and I'm just starting to see a 10-minute arrow, well, it has 10 minutes before it has to stay there permanently. So if the price just kind of fakes you out and goes and you get an arrow, and then within 5 minutes, maybe price reverts back to where it was, the arrow could go away. And that's okay. Just remember, what we're looking at here is we're synthesizing 6 different time frames together so that you don't have to look at 6 charts. But you just have to understand the nature of what you're looking at. And the brighter arrows and the brighter dots are tied to the larger time frames, so they are going to come and go with the periodicity of that time frame until the time frame bar closes, and then the dots or the arrow stays. So again, the colors represent the different time frames. So if we come down here to the globals, you'll see you can change all these if you want. So this is time frame 1 bearish color, that's the brightest red, and time frame 1 bullish color, that's the brightest green. Those are the highest time frames. So that's in this particular 1-minute chart, that's a 10-minute arrow or dot. And then we come all the way down to the 6th time frame, which is typically the chart we're looking at, and you see the darkest of the colors, the dark red or dark green. Of course, if you can't see that, if it looks black, that maybe your monitor brightness that needs adjusting. These can all be changed. If you want to use different colors, feel free to change these. The reason, again, the variations on the same color are there so that you can hopefully visually identify the time frame that the signal came from, because that's an important something to kind of tuck away in the back of your mind as you're watching these arrows and dots come on and off the screen. If you want to change them all, then go right ahead, change them to other colors, and certainly, if you're colorblind or something like that. So that answers the question of what's a red arrow versus a black arrow, right? The brighter the arrow, the higher the time frame. The darker, the lower the time frame. Okay. Other questions. As with the arrows and the dots, the bar coloring is the same thing. It's tied to all 6 time frames at once. So you can see bars turn green to bright green back to gray as they evolve until the higher time frame bars become closed. And like I said in the question I did the other day, if that's confusing to you, then just turn them off. This is really designed to be a shorthand view of what's going on down here on the oscillators. So it's certainly not required to have that. Okay, let's bring back all 3 charts. And if you're asking questions now, I'm not going to answer them. I'm going to go through what I'm going to talk about here, and then we'll throw the floor open to questions. So you might want to just save those for a bit, trying to answer as many sort of technical questions that I've seen pop up in the chat. So we can early turn some of these. So here we have all 3 indicators on a single chart here. So again, the major differences: the squeeze rotation is based on the squeeze histogram oscillator, which has greater smoothing. So it tends to move, more tectonically than the other ones. It's a little bit slower in creating signals, but they tend to be a little more robust in that by the time that squeeze oscillator finally turns or crosses the 0 line, it tends to be a firmer signal. Of course, you come over here to this trend rotation regular, and now we're looking at faster signals. And of course, a faster signal with respect to any indicator on any chart is always going to be more prone to whipsaws. That's just the nature of the beast. But for what we're doing in this class, these tend to, they're good signals for these quick hits. The difference between the regular and the SD, as John explained, is all we did with the SD version over here on the left was normalize the oscillator such that these oscillations about the 0 line are read in standard deviations as opposed to price movements. So again, when I look at these oscillations down here on the SD indicator, I can read them as exactly that. So this, at 10:30 this morning, this strong move down was almost a 2 standard deviation move on the smallest time frame. And that's why that has some utility in it, because you can read these, each different oscillator is still normalized to the same standard deviation, so that I can see at a glance, this particular move up right here, we were hitting nearly 2 standard deviations across all time frames, and if you understand how standard deviations work, then more often than not, a move that is, probably pushing 2 standard deviations is going to have to at least rest until some of the smaller time frames come back to 0 here, which is kind of what happened. So that's why I like the standard deviation version, as well as the turn threshold can be set and forget. You put it at 2, you're not going to see any dots unless the oscillator reached 2 standard deviations, and on the regular you won't see that. That was another big question that seemed to be floating around out there. Which one is better? And I don't think there's necessarily an answer to that question. They're answering different questions. You're going to see the signals at about the same time on both the regular and the SD version. You're just going to have the added benefit on the SD version of seeing if the move is how it relates in terms of normal moves, if you will. That's what the standard deviation is telling us. So, okay. Let's see. The one thing that I did not include in here, and it's probably remiss on my part, was the ability to change the bar colors. They are hard coded in there, and so I've got that down on my list of things to explore. If we do make a change to the indicator to allow the bar coloring to be customized, that won't be pushed out for a while. It'll be after all the live trading's over, so we don't confuse anybody. And if we do, we'll send you all an email and let you know there's a different version available that allows you to change the price bar colors to suit your, if you're colorblind or something like that. So alerts, I'll tell you what, you don't want alerts on this indicator. It will absolutely drive you insane. It'll just be ringing and dinging nonstop, and really I don't think it's worth adding on there. That's just my 2 cents after having been at this for quite a long time. So, okay, those are some technical questions that I saw pop up. Any plans for updates to the TradingView version? So the TradingView versions, they're all there. We've got the rotation SD, as well as the squeeze rotation. They're all on there. They function exactly the same. All the inputs are the same. They're essentially the same. So I don't know that there are any updates required there. If I make an update to the Thinkorswim indicator, I allow the price bar coloring to be customized, I'll do the same thing in TradingView. But over on TradingView now, you can set up your charts exactly the way John has. We've got the EMAs, we've got the EMA labels, and I did the multi-cross for TradingView as well. So everything is all there if you want to set it up on TradingView. If you don't have access to some of these indicators in TradingView, then as long as you sent your username into support, they will add you, and they're cranking through that. Be patient. But all the indicators are there, and they're published, and they are available. It's just a matter of our back-end folks authorizing your username. Okay, let me put that away, and I will start to look for some questions here. Now, if everybody flows them all in at once, it's going to be pros and cons to loading them all on one chart. I would tend to not. And some other thing, let me bring up one other point about these. These are data-intensive indicators, right? If you think about it, each chart here is actually 6 charts because it has 6 different time frames. So this is the equivalent of 18 charts, indicators and calculations. So I would, for like these 1-minute charts, I'm using a 3-day 1-minute chart. That's probably more than enough data to have on the chart. And that will kind of lean things up a little bit. If you've got like a 30-day 1-minute chart, that's just overkill. We don't need that much data. So for the 5-minute charts, I'd probably go with, maybe 5 to 10 days worth of data. And then a 30-minute chart, you can probably go with, 15, 30 days worth of data, but I wouldn't go with any more of that. You're just loading extra data, which and it's not an issue once your chart's loaded, but if you're switching ticker symbols each time you do that, it's got to load 18 charts worth of data, right? So it's just, you're going to bog things down. So you're better off right sizing the number of days worth of data that you put onto these charts. Any plans for TradeStation indicators? So Chris, let me give you my 2 cents on that. So historically, we've always provided TradeStation as an alternative platform for indicators. The problem is the way TradeStation handles higher time frame data is, I'll just put it bluntly, it's clunky at best. And so the charts become exceedingly difficult to set up. That's the first thing. And then in many cases, depending on how we set up the indicators, the signals always appear 1 bar late compared to every other platform in the universe. So do you want me to build you an indicator that's always behind everybody else? I don't think so. So when it comes to multiple time frame stuff, we just don't do it on TradingView. So the alternative now, or I'm sorry, not TradingView, we don't do it on TradeStation. So the alternative now is TradingView, because the TradingView, I mean, if you haven't looked at their charts or you haven't had a chance to play around with them, they are some of the absolute best charts out there. So this to me is a viable alternative if you can't use Thinkorswim for whatever reason. Yeah, a lot of us will use one platform to chart and a different platform to trade, and that's just kind of the way we do business. And I think that's there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people will use Thinkorswim for charting and Tastyworks for execution, and et cetera, et cetera. But okay. How do you get charts in TradingView? So if you want the TradingView stuff, you got to talk to the support folks in the back end, and they can authorize your username. And you can only have a certain number of indicators on your chart unless you have a paid version of TradingView. But honestly, the paid versions of TradingView are pretty darn cheap. And if you're smart about it, you can wait till they're, once or twice a year, they have like a 50% off sale. So you can get like a year's worth of TradingView for $100 or something. Okay. Did I modify the TradingView? Oh, I have the candle for, the candle colors can be turned off. That's your option. And I don't use the candle colors personally, which is mine are just traditional candles. The candle colors are really to help you confirm what's going on down here on the oscillator. Not confirm, but it's just another way of seeing what's going on the oscillator. So at least in my opinion, if I've got this on the chart, I don't need the candle colors. I can see it all going on down here. So I tend to turn them off. That's just me, though. David says his squeeze rotation tick label. Yeah, I passed along a new label to John today, which he probably included in his latest share link. Let me see if I can find that, and I'll just pass it along real quick. I'm going to post this up above real quick. This is color label. Okay, put that up there. Okay. All right. RRR Nelson, can I provide another basic explanation of squeeze rotation oscillator? So again, this The squeeze rotation is using our beloved TTM squeeze histogram, and that's what you're looking at here. When we look at this chart, this is actually the TTM squeeze histogram across 6 time frames. That's what it is. So when we go over here to trend rotation, now we're looking at a different oscillator. It's not the TTM squeeze, it's a multiple moving average oscillator. And it's keyed to work a little bit faster. So these oscillations that occur are generally will populate signals a little earlier, though you're prone to get more false signals. That's the duality of all things that relate to trading. You know, the quicker your signals, the less likely they are to be, you know, not less likely, but more likely to see whipsaws and things of that nature. So, but as John explained earlier, for the type of quick hits trading, you know, either one of these will work. You will probably see the trend rotation populate a signal a little bit before the other one, but you know, not terribly so. You can see here we're in the same ballpark here in terms of what you're seeing on both of these. Ed, you get no dots. Remember, Ed, if you're not seeing the dots, change your turn threshold. Just put it to 0 on your chart, and you'll see them for everything. Trader Vic wants a scan for when price is 0.75 from the 21 on the 30-minute, please. So we could certainly create a scan for that, Trader Vic. In my experience, at least in Thinkorswim, if you run a scan, then you create a scan alert based on a 30-minute chart, the results that you get back from that scan, or the you know, when it sends you an alert, may not be timely enough, because that information is all cached on the Thinkorswim servers. And so, you know, when you'd like to get that alert in the here and now, you might not. And even if you run the scan, it might be a bar late. So I can certainly look into making a scan. It's not difficult to do. I'm not so sure you're going to get the result out of it you expect. When trading, do you use the grid? The grid with all three is just here for demonstration purposes. This is not something that I think you would use. I would not use all 3 indicators on the same time frame. That's just overkill there. Okay, scenario is best for each rotation study. Matt, I don't think there's such a thing as a best per the indicators. They're all fine. You know, they show you slightly different things, and as long as you understand the differences, you can use any one of them to execute the trades. I like the squeeze rotation myself, but I tend to use it in a little bit different way, because I like to look for these long time frame divergences. Notice how you see this on this, as the market was coming down here and trying to make a bottom here, we had all these time frames starting to diverge here, and then we started getting these higher time frame crosses right here. I think that's a great signal right there. So I like this particular one, but it's a different type of trade than what John's teaching here in the class. So, you know, listen to what John's telling you. No joke there, folks. you're learning from one of the best. Let's see. Colorful tick label is just a tick label that is green when the tick is above 0 and red when below 0. Which study governs the use of the candlestick color? So that's the lower indicators. All these, not the signals one. And the reason that is, you have to back in history a little bit in terms of the development. In terms of the development, these all came first, and we added the candle coloring along with this indicator. And then later is when John said, hey, can we get some arrows? So then we added some arrows, and then John said, can we get some dots? And we got some dots. So, let's see, overall toss. So if you're trying to match your charts to John's, just use that share link. That's the easiest answer there. If it's not matching exactly, then yeah, likely it is something like start aggregations at market open. You can flip that back and forth and see which one works better. In general, for extended trading hours, we're going to have those off. If you're trading equities like SPX, you're going to have extended hours turned off. Gabe says, how can I tell which oscillator is which? So the trend rotation is colored by default in the color of the squeeze. Red, yellow, light blue, dark blue. The rotation regular and rotation SD, you can see the name right here in the label if you're not sure, but the surefire giveaway is the fact that the SD version is ranging around, between 0 and 2 standard deviations, 80%, 87% of the time, or whatever the number is. So you can see that right away here. On the threshold, what do the values represent? So the threshold value is movement of the oscillator. So it's price dependent. So on this chart of the spiders, this oscillator is moving from minus 0.4 to plus 1.2. That's the value that you care about. So if you're looking at this chart and you want to filter out some of your signals, some of the dot signals, you can move that threshold in relation to what you're seeing down here. Again, if that's too confusing, just put it to 0 and you'll see them all. And then you can ignore turn threshold entirely. Gil was seeing arrows on JC's chart, dots on mine. They should, if your chart is set up the same as John's, you'll see the exact same thing. I guarantee you that. So there might be something that's, if you're not using the share links, if you changed it around a little bit, that there's something a little bit different. Christian says, what is the best turn threshold? So anytime anyone asks me the question with relationship to an indicator, and they ask me for best, most accurate, what are the other terms people use? The answer is you need to stop asking that question, because that's a question that never has an answer. It's an endless rabbit hole that you can go down for an eternity. There's no for sure things in trading, and I wouldn't say there's a best turn threshold to use. If you're going to put it on the SD version, I'd put it at 2. And that way, the minor oscillations that are inside 1 standard deviation, which are occurring all the time, are ignored. The larger ones, which only occur, 10-15% of the time, are the ones you're going to start getting dots for. So I would use it in that sense. But, I would shy away from the idea of best anything. Set a nominal value and leave it and forget about it. On the squeeze rotation, what is the equivalent of a red dot? It's an oscillator that is switched directions. So notice right here on my chart here, I've got multiple red dots. They start off with the darker because that's the shortest time frame, and they start getting brighter as the larger time frames change from light blue oscillator to the dark blue. And you can see that very visually here down on the oscillator, the turning as the longer time frames start to, quote, roll over. I know we didn't like that term, but Professor Jedi says he needs to learn how to program audio alerts. I didn't say I wouldn't put them in. I think I can put them in. It's not difficult to do. I just think that what we'll probably do is if we go down that road, they'll be turned off by default. You'll need to go in and turn them on, and then a day later you'll turn them off again. So, okay, if you don't know how to open up a TOS share link, you don't click on the link. You have to cut and paste it into the Thinkorswim setup menu for open shared item. Okay. And for those of you that are asking me for share links, I generally never provide a share link. So John has them to match his charts in the class, but I'm not going to provide those. This is not a chart that anybody should be using. So, all right. How do you input the period values into TradingView? So in TradingView, I put a little tooltip in there to make it easy for you. So if you're looking at the customization here, you go to the settings. Oh, it's not working right now. Here, let me go over to settings. Whoops, wrong one. Got to click right on the indicator. There it is. All right. So your higher time frames are here, and if you hover over this little eye here, for intraday time frames, anything can be listed in minutes. You can just put in the number of minutes. So 1 up to 240. I think you can even do 480. I don't know. I haven't tried. But for a minute-based chart, such as 1 hour, 2 hour, 4 hour, you can just type in the number of minutes. If you want a daily interval, you just put D. If you want 2 days, just put 2D. It's pretty straightforward. All right. Color tick label does change color. Multiple dots just paint on top of each other, multiple arrows in a given bar as well. Can they be jittered or stacked? They shouldn't really be on top of each other for the most part. It's very rare that you get 2 time frames getting, unless there's a big move. So you don't, and yeah, I see what you're getting at. I think it's probably a very little value add, at least in my opinion. It's going to be such a rare thing to happen. Let's see. Okay. How do you remove one of the charts and display 2, Max? So if you've got a multiple grid set up in Thinkorswim, you can just go up to this grid menu here and change it from whatever dimensions it is to any other dimension, and the rightmost and bottommost grids will disappear. Is it overkill to have trend rotation, squeeze rotation signals on the same time frame? I would say yes. I would say pick the one that you're most in tune with, and that you might not have an answer for that for weeks. So don't feel like you're in a all fired rush. Find the one that works best with you, and then just use that one. 29 Scroll says to trade Amazon, you would need to play around with the turn threshold. Yes, absolutely. Either put it at 0 and just forget about it, and then later on, as you become more acquainted with how you're trading Amazon, and I would say figure out how Amazon trades, then you might want to change that around. I notice my 5-minute for regular and SD are different. Can you confirm on yours? So these are 1-minute charts. So in order to set up 5-minute charts, I would have to go in and change all the time frames, which is going to be kind of confusing. The regular and the SD are going to have slightly different oscillator looks and slightly different signals just because the one is normalized and the other isn't. All right, a lot of people want alerts. I will put in alerts, guys, but don't expect me to push that update for probably another week or so until all the live trading is done. I don't want to confuse anybody with multiple versions of indicators. So I'll put them in, and then you guys can shoot yourself later when your machine sounds like a pinball machine. Let's see. Dan, the indicators are already available in Tastyworks. I know I'm about 5 minutes behind on the questions. Why do my charts look so different than these? Are 1-minute charts, so these would be equivalent to the rightmost pane on John's charts. This is the spiders as well. He might have SPX up still. Let's see. Trying to filter through the questions versus comments. Yeah, I Delta 50, David. I'm going to make a version that we push in a couple of weeks here is going to have you can be able to customize the candle colors to your Hertz consent. All right. How do you incorporate the quant pivots? So the quant pivots, I think, are a great add anytime you're looking for support and resistance, right? And that's how I would use these. If you're looking to take a trade in the opposite direction, being at a 2 standard deviation quant pivot level is a great place to take a trade. So this was a nice trade earlier on this 1-day level here. These are 2 hours low, 2-hour levels here. So it's just an extra piece of information, though entirely not necessary. It's a nice add. Okay. Yeah, when I put the alerts in, you'll be able to turn them on and off. I'll put in 6 different alerts for 6 different time frames. They'll all be defaulted to off, so you'll have to go in and turn them on one by one. Add a VIX label or a tick label. So there are those basic utility label indicators are included, and you can go in and just add them to the chart. And then there's a good question. What does the zero line filter do? So for this particular one, for the squeeze rotation, let me maximize this one. With respect to the candle coloring, so let's go up here to our indicators. Let's go to the lower one, zero line filter. So if I turn on the zero line filter, then what happens is you'll see the candle colors are going to change here. I get a lot more gray in here. And why is that? This is to look for even higher, I won't say probability trades, but instances. This is designed to try to keep you out of chop a little bit, right? So notice when price is moving sideways here, these candles are mostly gray, and that's because in order to color the candles, all of the oscillators have to be moving, in this particular case, up and above the zero line, as opposed to up and some below the zero line. That's what the zero line filter does. So you're only going to get candles when all the oscillators are moving in one direction and on that side of the zero line. That's what the zero line filter does. So it's trying to filter out some of the trades that might otherwise chop you up. So I encourage you to experiment with that. You'll see on the downside here, we just get the candle colors when all of the oscillators are moving the same way and below the zero line. That's what it does. Let me turn that back off. That was Phil's question. Thank you for that. Trader Vic is asking for colored labels when the EMA. So the EMA labels are just little helper studies. So they're generally just little, we're probably not going to customize those anymore. Oh boy, let's see. I need to turn off this automatically scroll to the bottom thing. Keeps scrolling to the bottom and I keep losing my place in the questions. There we go. Not seeing percent from on your trading view charts. Did you add the higher time frame EMA? If you did, then you'll get this option over here, and then there's an option inside the settings itself to change the order of these things. Because if you put multiples and you want to start stacking them up, you have to change this label row. Notice if they're both set to 1, then they paint on top of each other. But I put the option in there to be able to put up to 5 of these things in here so that you could move them around. If you don't have the indicator on your chart, then obviously you won't see the label. Do you wait for the candle to close before? So again, as I spoke to earlier, Darren, you have to understand what time frame those dots and arrows are tied to. So I'll never say that an arrow or a dot is not valid. It's always valid. It's just referencing something going on in another time frame. And so it might take some time before that particular arrow or dot is fixed in place permanently. And the darker the arrow or the dot, the more likely it's going to stay almost immediately because it's probably coming off the lowest time frame. And then again, if you're using a 30-minute time frame in there somewhere, well, that arrow or dot could come and go for 30 minutes, depending on where in the 30-minute bar cycle it is. You know, you have to kind of keep that all up in your head. Dots that are turn downs like this are going to be on the top of the bar, and dots that are caused by a rotation up are at the bottom of the bar. Lots of questions about alerts. Mike, I don't have any on any of my charts. What is the indicator that pushes those? Are you talking about if you're talking about the dots, just go into your turn threshold on the lower indicator on the rotation or trend rotation or rotation SD and change the turn threshold to 0. Jim wants to not want to beat horse. Can you allow alerts to be updated real time for Excel? I don't know that you can export anything out of a study into Excel. I've never done that before. If it's a possibility, it's not something I'm aware of. All right. Okay, we talked about the percent on the TradingView charts. Is it possible to make TradingView signals bigger arrows? I think that's built into TradingView. So let's go in here and let's see if we can. Nope, I gotta click right on one of these dots. Settings, style. So you can go in here and you know what, we can't change the size. I'll look into that and see if there's a way to do that, because I did it in these other indicators. There is, you know, like there's a way to change the size. I may have to rewrite that indicator a little bit. So let me take a look. Like with this particular on the multi-cross, I gave you the option to be able to change the size of the indicator. And I think I can probably do the same thing with the signal triangles and dots, but I'll have to go in. No guarantees. I'll go in and take a look at that. I can review the quant pivot levels. That's, you know, of course, I'll put them up here. We just rolled over a period, so the levels just changed. Really, that's not what we're talking about here today, though, but I'll just leave that up while I look for some more questions. If you can't open the colorful tick label, please go to your setup menu, upper right of Thinkorswim, setup, open shared item, and put that link right in here. You can't click on it. That won't work. I know that seems a little bit crazy, but that's how Thinkorswim chose to mechanize that. Will it be a version for Motive Wave? No plans for that, Roberto. Christian, there's already a moving average indicator for TradingView. Johnny B, another request for alerts. Big Dave, that already exists again on TradingView. This is what it looks like. You get it's one indicator that puts both the higher time frame EMA and the label on a single chart. Jim, more questions about the RTD. Yeah, I don't think an indicator-based alert will work there. I don't think it will. Possible of 5-minute percent from 30 EMA label to change color. When, if you know, I will put that in my list of suggestions here, and we'll talk it over with the powers that be and see if that's something that we should do. I think it will be confusing because the label color is tied to the EMA color. Where do I find the turn threshold in Thinkorswim? It's going to be in any of the signals indicators. So the ones that say signals in the settings. It's an easy way to move the dots off the high or the low. That's where they're anchored for now. Labels for TradingView, yes, they're there already. Is there a way at a glance to see the time frame of each of the oscillators? So in Thinkorswim, you can kind of see right here in the status line, minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute. Mike, if your charts don't show the dots, then go into the settings for your rotation signals or whatever, either any of the signals indicators, and make your turn threshold 0. If you do that, they should all appear. Dan B says, can you have an 821 cross indicator for 2 different time frames, or will the one we have work? So the multi-cross, you can set it up for whatever EMAs you want and whatever time frames you want. It's completely extensible in that regard. Let's see. Whew. Trying to find where I left off. Lots of questions about TradingView. I think those have been answered already. Your username has to get to our support folks. All right. Colored tick label, the one I just put above, it puts, let me show you. I'll put it on the chart. ST tick label, it's this one. And you'll see tick up in the corner, and it's red if the ticks are currently marking below 0 and green if they're above 0. That's what it does. The original one that we included was just white or whatever color. Okay. Aardvark wants a cloud band around the 30-minute EMA at the 0.75. Well, that's not a half bad suggestion. I'm going to put that down on my list of potential things to add on. Talked about the time frame for the rotation lines. Multi-cross label, how do you set? You talking about Thinkorswim, Joe? Multi-cross, ST multi-cross. So I'm just going to put 2 of them on here to demonstrate. They default to the day time frame. So if you go into the settings, you can change it from day to anything else. So I'm going to put one of these on like a 10 minutes. And then I'll put the other one on like 5 minutes. So you just go into the settings and just go into the drop-down menu. It's just like it is for the rotation indicators. Set your 2 AMAs, and then you'll see up in the corner, we'll see 521 cross on the 10-minute, 521 cross on the 5-minute. So that was Aardvark's question. Now the version in TradingView is the cat's pajamas, at least from my perspective as a programmer, because it puts all 10 on the chart at once, and you don't have to add it 10 different times and change each one. You can just go in and change the settings right here and add in all the time frames you want. I've got mine 1 through 10 minutes here. You can change the size, you can change the position if you want, all kinds of stuff. And you can add multiples on here if you choose to, if you want to do different crosses, like, 834 or something like that. Anyway, okay. When we have more than one version of the indicator toss, which one should we use? So when I push an update, which again, I'm not to not confuse anybody, won't be until the class is over and the live trading is over. We'll push the update. I'll leave the name exactly the same. So it'll still see, ST squeeze rotation or whatever. And all you'll need to do is re-import it into your system, and Thinkorswim will automatically fix all of your charts with the new version. The dots only show momentum changes from positive to negative if above zero, and from negative to positive if below zero. They do not show a change from negative to positive if above zero, nor a change from positive to negative if below zero. I mean, there's a reason for that, Adrian. Joe's getting dots over arrows with the SD version. Dots over arrows. Dots over arrows. I'm not sure if you mean they're obscuring each other, or if you think there's a bug in there, which is entirely possible, grab a screenshot and send it to me. Eric at simplertrading.com, and I'll definitely take a look. I make as many mistakes as the next guy, so it's entirely possible I missed something. Okay. Oh, trading view. Dots over arrow. Okay, I'll take a look at that. Yeah, I'm trying to look at the screenshot here and see what I'm looking at. Dots over arrows. I think maybe what you're trying to say is they're obscuring each other. There are not that many dots for it might be because of the turn threshold. Okay, I'm probably going to go for up till the top of the hour here, and then it's probably time for everybody to get away from the computer and go outside and walk around. Yeah, I will push an update that allows you to change all the candle colors if you want to. Again, expect that in a couple weeks. And Darko wants to know, I will investigate making the signals larger on TradingView. Yellowstone, I saw the previous bar arrow also getting dropped or added, not just the current one. So again, imagine, so this is a 1 minute chart here, Yellowstone, right? And I've got oscillators on here all the way up to 10 minutes. So if I see a bright green arrow or a bright red arrow or a bright green dot or a bright red dot, that's tied to the 10-minute time frame. So and imagine that we're on the opening bar of a 10-minute candle, right? So we're in the first 1 minute of the 10-minute candle. It's got 9 more minutes before that arrow or dot is permanently affixed, because that 10-minute candle is still building and it can go up and down, back and forth. The signal can appear and disappear. So, everybody's looking for this absolute certainty. And I wish I could make an indicator that could look 10 minutes in the future and tell you how that bar is going to close, but I can't. All I can do is tell you in the here and now that a signal is appearing on that higher time frame chart, which is why the arrows and dots are color coded so you can see them. If you see a brighter arrow or a brighter dot, you have to understand that's subject to fluctuation over the time frame of that particular oscillator, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you have it set at. So that's the nature of the way it works, and that's exactly what you would be seeing if you had that 10-minute chart sitting off to the side. So yeah, absolutely, Yellowstone. It can, imagine, so we're on a 1-minute chart here, and let's say the 10-minute bar just opened and an arrow appears on the 10-minute chart. So it's going to appear right here on this particular 1-minute bar. And then 9 minutes later, price collapses. The 10-minute bar has not closed yet, and that 10-minute buy arrow goes away. Well, that arrow from 10 bars back or 9 bars back is going to go away, because that was an arrow anchored to the 10-minute bar. And until that 10-minute bar closes, nothing is fixed. Yeah, absolutely. So remember, I mean, folks, that if you see the darker dots and arrows, they're probably going to be fixed in place within a minute or two, depending on which chart you're looking at. If it's the brightest color, it's that you have a 10-minute window there on this particular 1-minute chart with a 10-minute highest time frame. Could I program the arrows not to appear until time? I could. It'd just be, it could be up to 10 minutes late, or up to whatever your highest time frame late is. My preference is to do it like this, and that is, as long as I understand what I'm looking at, then I'm okay with it. You just have to think back to the genesis of what we're doing here, and that is we're trying to look at 6 charts at once while not looking at 6 charts at once. And if you kind of get that core idea cemented in your head, then you understand why everything is doing what it's doing. Yeah. Okay, can you explain again with the turn threshold of 5? So the turn threshold essentially on any of the indicators says, I don't want to see these turn dots up here unless the turn in the oscillator occurs above or below that threshold value. So on this one, I've got it set to 2. So any of these rotations that are occurring that are staying within 2 standard deviations, I'm not getting any dots up here. You see I got one back here because these occurred over 2 standard deviations. And that's the idea there. If you want to see them all, you just come in here and take the turn threshold and make it 0, and then you take that filter off, and they'll all show up. But you can see how when we're oscillating around the 0 line, you tend to get a lot of dots. And so that's why that filter is available. Yes, the lighter arrows and lighter dots are tied to the higher time frames. They take longer to, quote, close, and the darker they are, the quicker they'll be permanent.